Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So before we start, I've made a few changes. So in our store, we've actually now have two stores. So one is the SearchContext and the other is the CityContext, which we built in the last episode. So if you haven't checked out the last episode, please do so because the SearchContext is almost exactly the same. I've just moved a lot of our search related logic inside of a context so that we can share it amongst all of our search components. So as you can see, we have the search term and the results of our search and the similar concept of adding a provider and displaying all the children. We are using this in the app component. So if we go to the app component, the only place we need it is in the home page because that's where we would be searching. And if we look at our search component now, all it does is use the search context, and it's almost the same data, right? So we still have the set cities method, and we still have the set result method, but they're all moved out into a context so that it can be shared. And if we go to the app and I try to search for something, it still works just fine. And I've changed the type here a little bit. So let me show you that as well. So if we go to our stores component, we now have a new folder called interfaces, and we'll be using this file to hold all of the typed data that we have. So our main data now is city, and it includes a weather data which was used separately in our previous videos. A good use of this we can see in our search component where we actually create a city. So whenever we get a search result, we, instead of creating a weather data object, we actually create a city object. So we set that to the search result, and then when we press the plus button, instead of creating a city from the weather data, we just set the cities here with our new result. We can safely say that our home component is almost finished. We may work on it a little bit later, but in this video we will focus on our second page, which is the content page. So right now it just says content, and if I go to /weather, it just displays a content text here. We want to update this and make it look more like our design. Again, that looks something like this, where we created the sidebar and also a weather information section on the right. So let's go ahead and start on that. So first of all, I'm going to update the name of this to be weather info. I think it'll be more clear on what that actually is. And inside of here, we know that we need to have two components. One is the sidebar and the other is the actual weather data. So let's go ahead and create the sidebar first. That'll go in our components. So we know our sidebar is actually just a big vertical line. So what we'll do is create a div here called sidebar, and then we're going to style it in our CSS file. So let's target the class, and then the height of this will actually just be 100% because that's what the sidebar is. And the width, let's just look at our design, what it should be. So we won't actually set a height or a width for the sidebar. We'll just put the search results in here, and the sidebar will automatically take the size of that. So you'll understand what I mean, but we'll just, instead of setting a width, we'll set a min width so we can actually see it for now of, let's say, 100 pixels. Obviously it's going to be much bigger than that, and we need a background color of, so we should actually put this in a variable, right, because it's one of the main colors that in our application. So let's import our variables file, and if we actually go to the file, we can see that we already have a variable called primary dark. So let's add that here. And let's see what that looks like. And there's an error. So content, right, we updated this to weather info. So let's export our sidebar component from this file, and we also need to import React as well as the CSS file. So now in our weather info page, we will just have a sidebar here, which will get auto imported. We don't need any children for that. Okay, let's go to the weather page. So we can see the sidebar is there, but the weather info actually does not have a width or a height. So if we can try this out in the styles tab here. So let's try adding a height of 100%. So that seems to work, but that also means that our sidebar now is 100% of the parent. So as you know, block level component, so this div by default is display block. and that means that it'll take 100% of our parent component. So we actually need to also set a maximum width to this, or maybe we can set just a width. So in this case, if we set a width of 20, that would work. But let's actually look at, so the sidebar here is a width of 300 pixels. So that works out perfectly for us. We can actually just go here and set it to a width of 300. Okay, great. So the next thing in our design will be to add these cities. So we already have the data here. So if I go to application and local storage, we are storing 3 cities as of now. So we should be able to display the same 3 cities here. Now remember, we already have components that we can use for this because we've already done the search results component. So we can actually use the same one. So in our sidebar, let's try and display a list here. So we need to use our context of cities. So let's import that. We'll use the use context and then provide it city context. And then if you remember, in our search components, we have a search result component, which we could actually grab from how we are displaying it right here. So these are the results. The only thing that will change is the array that we are looping over. So let's try and implement that right here. So we know that we need to loop over the list of cities. So that'll be CityContext.cities.map, and map function will take in a function which will run for every element in our cities array. So this will actually be a city object. Let's import that. And this map function should actually return some JSX. So we know we need to return the search result so that it can show up on our page. And the search result in our case takes in a property called data. So the data is nothing but the city. So let's pass that in here. All right, that looks pretty good. Now we do have some weird padding and margin issues, so let's try to fix that right here. And if we look at the first and the second, they all have the same kind of margin. So we can fix that by going to the sidebar and then adding a padding top of, let's say, 30 pixels, or let's make that 25. Okay, so if we add a padding top, we can see that the sidebar now has a top padding and it doesn't interfere with the margins that we need for our search results. So let's open our sidebar and then add that padding into our code. And if you notice that the search result is no longer just a search result, so that was a misnaming on our part. So we should actually name this something better, something like city summary or something similar to that. So we can have city summary and then maybe city weather info. But that's all for this video, and then in the next video we'll handle how these click and then how we update the router at the top. If you have any questions and if you would like to know how the series is going, or if you want this series to go in a different way, please comment down below and I'll probably take that into consideration and then work on those types of videos. Instead of the context API, you can also use something called the MobX library, which is more of a publish and subscribe pattern. A little bit different than context, but it is an external library that you have to import. And please like the video so that other people can easily find these videos and maybe it'll help them out. Thanks.